the facts and giving hot takes. Getting the stats, he never takes breaks. Always there for you. He's like a mesh.
Baseball edition.
Hi, everyone, and we're back with an episode number 4 Hot Take with Hot Idiots Road to the Top. It's Ethan's birthday today, so I thought I'd give him the day off, and we'll join with him next week, hopefully in hot tubs. So, Hot Takes with Hot Idiots and hot tubs, hopefully eating hot dogs. We'll see how it goes. Wanted to kind of recap what happened last week, and let's just jump right into it. The journey begins. We have week 1 results. For some of us, not so great. Myself and Aaron only coming away with one category. A lot of these games were tight, though. That was my biggest takeaway. Ethan won with 6, as did Vince, as did Chris. So, pretty close games. The one big blowout, I would say, was Scott, 8-1 versus Aaron. Very hot start for Scott. Looking real good week 1. Some of my biggest takeaways that I wanted to highlight here was, of course, myself. The commissioner gets crushed. I got totally blown out week 1. So obviously, being the person in charge of this podcast, I got to go over the reasons why that happened. Okay. First of all, kudos to Lucas. Poor management on my part. I wasted all my subs very early on. So all these breakout players like Connor Joe, Quan, a lot of these Mackenzie Gore that came along, or Lizardo, I didn't even get the chance at getting them because I just did not have any of my subs available. And I felt like a lot of relief pitchers went really early too, and I was sad to miss out on that talent getting picked up. I traded Chris Bassett, which cost me just 3 categories: wins, strikeouts, and my whip. Possibly my ERA as well. I'm not going to do all the math involved with those weighted innings pitched, but it might have hurt me there too. So, just very painful to pretty much just lose my matchup in a trade. It hurts. It haunts me. It haunts me to this day. I was tied in runs, RBI, and home runs. Very sad that the game was postponed with Perez and Mendoza. My 2 very early round draft picked batters that just lost another game in that. They lost 2 games in that first week due to postponements. Very annoying to me, so that kind of hurt me on those categories. And like I said, just outmanaged like a fool. Was it part of his plan? Well, I've heard it's good to be weak 1, so maybe. No, it wasn't. I'm very sad. Very sad to get crushed like this. Another person who lost that I wasn't expecting was Art. Art gets disgraced week 1. He's the savvy vet, the platinum user. You see him and, he has a good team. He knows what he's doing. He's been around the block before. And I just wanted to highlight some of the quotes. Here's a made-up one from Vince. I just don't know if he has what it takes anymore. Another one from myself in the podcast last week is, if you beat Art, you can beat anyone. So Ethan went out there and proved that. And also, as Art said, even before we did the draft, he had a message for Art, and that was, "You're going to respect me after week 1, old man." And, I feel like Ethan lived up to it. He came out and he got the W. He won 6 categories. Just very impressive win. So let's get into some of the advanced stats that we can break down. And I actually don't like doing this because the advanced stats look bad for me, especially on batting. I was in the bottom of 3 categories, just dead last. Runs, RBI, and averages. Again, I did have a lot of postponed games, so I feel like that kind of hurts me. But also home runs. I was 1 home run away. I had 10. 9 was the worst, Ethan's team. So I was 1 home run away from being the bottom of 4 categories in batting. I was number 1 in stolen bases. And that's kind of how I thought things would play out. I was hoping to be more towards the middle, though, and hopefully with the acquisition of Yelich, who just recently hit his first home run of the season, and hopefully Altuve can get healthy. Maybe you'll see more of a return just to the middle. I don't need to be at the top, but wow, I'm shocked to be this bad coming out week 1. So I'll just go over some of the teams that dominated Pete Rose Arbiter, Chris, 60 runs. Very nice. He was looking really good. And Scott and Nick both looked really good in runs. So those are two teams I wasn't expecting to be as good as they were at batting. And also Scott and Nick both had 15 home runs. So both really, really good starts to their season on the batting. For home runs, we had Art at 19. That was number one by quite a few. RBIs, we had 58 from Thomas's rad team. Again, though, Scott looking real good, 56. Came out swinging this week 1. Stolen bases, I was sitting at 9, far ahead of everyone else. Lucas and Art were sitting at 2. No surprise from Art. His team was not built for stolen bases. One I was surprised, though, was Chris getting 6 stolen bases. I didn't look at his team as one that would be getting a lot this year. But so far, week 1, he's looking good. And then on the averages, number 1 was Vince, the Great Hambinos. No, the last place one was myself at .183. I was the only team that was not a .2 or higher. In fact, looking through, the 9th worst was Aaron at .226. I was just miles behind everyone in average. Not good. I had a lot of players that just did not do their job, which is why I have already, again this week, just completely dropped the dead weight on my team and trying to refill it with people that could actually hit, because, wow, I had a lot of swings and misses this week. Moving over to the advanced stats and pitching, wins was Pete Rose Arbiter. Again, Chris I viewed as a batting team. To see him number 1 in wins week 1, great sign for him. And last place was Scott, only 2. Kind of the reverse of what I was expecting to see. Not a lot of wins, but that's okay because somehow he had a lot of strikeouts. He had a lot of ERA and WHIP. He was number 1 in those 3 categories. And I view teams that win strikeouts not normally able to win the ERA and WHIP because they're going to have to start so many pitchers that it's going to hurt their average. They're not going to have great pitchers to fill all those slots, especially when you only have 2 wins, the worst. But he somehow got the trifecta of strikeouts, ERA, and WHIP, number 1 in all 3 of those categories. So Scott's team is my biggest takeaway of just looking pretty damn good. As far as people that look bad, saves, Chris and Nick, only 1 save. Strikeouts. This is crazy because I thought Nick had so many pitchers leaving the draft that he would just have to win this one. And he's dead last, 67. Tied with me, also at 67. However, that Chris Bassett trade, I lost a starting pitcher, which was 8 strikeouts. That would have been a big difference. I'm not worried. Out of all the things I'm bad at, which is mainly batting, not worried at all about strikeouts. I can just start more pitchers, which this week I should. So not too concerned about that. ERA and WHIP, Thomas's team, last in both. They kind of go hand in hand. You saw Scott won both of them and Thomas lost both of them. Thomas's ERA, the only one over 5. He's at a 5.45. So pretty bad. His whips, it looks deceptively close all the time, but the worst one was 1.49. The best was 1.09. So you're really getting down to the nitty gritty, but I do feel like ERA and WHIP kind of follow each other. If you have a good ERA, you probably have a good WHIP. For the most part, they're hand in hand. So, all right, let's get to standouts. I've kind of already said it, but Scott came out good week 1. We'll see if he can hold on to that type of batting, and we'll see if he can somehow maintain a high strikeout number with a good ERA and WHIP. I don't know that it's possible, but, I mean, come on. He had the most dominant performance week 1. You have to like what you saw. He was number 1 in 5 categories week 1. Pretty nice. The shocking team for me was my own team, the Lanky Bird Club. I finished last in 4 categories. Now, like I said, I'm not worried about strikeouts, and I already kind of knew I had a bad batting team. I think I've made some adjustments, though, and the one that was The scariest to me was the average because it was just such an outlier, so bad. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what I can do, how I can adjust that. Looking real bad week 1. I'm tied for last place with only 1 win. And then Chris is another one. Pete Rose, Arbiter. He looks strong because I already knew he had a great batting team and it showed up in a big way. But he also had so many wins and strikeouts. If he can keep that up, I mean, his team is probably the scariest one to face right now to me. So, really solid looking team. And those are the big standout performances of the week. So, let's jump into week 2 matchups. Lucas versus Chris. So, I kind of already talked about how Chris's team looks pretty damn good. Some things to worry about, though, is Byron Buxton already looking hurt. Jonathan India, his second baseman, is hurt, and he does not have a replacement. As of now, he could use a sub. So, that might slow down that amazing batting team that we saw in the past. He also, one of his relief pitchers is hurt, and looking through his lineup, he has plenty of other relief pitchers, so I think he can move things around there to be fine. Looking over at Lucas's team, it was kind of a bad performance as far as just batting. He happened to just be going against the worst batting team last week, so I think he kind of got away with winning a lot of categories despite not having a great performance on the batting side. I don't know. Even with those sets back with Chris, I expect Chris to just easily win runs, home runs, RBIs, and the batting average. So that's just immediately 4 categories. It's hard to pick against Chris when he did number 1 in wins last week, so I got to give him that one. And then strikeouts, he had a much higher strikeout rate than Lucas, who I think could adjust to that and lean heavy into the pitching, but then you're just giving up on all of that batting. So, yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to look at this matchup any other way than Chris wins 6 categories. So, I think Lucas can win saves, ERA, and WHIP, and stolen bases. So that's 4 categories I think are low-hanging fruit against Chris. He didn't have a lot of saves last week, and if you play smart, ERA and WHIP should be pretty easy to win, and same with stolen bases. So after that, it's just how does Lucas attack this matchup? I think Lucas is one of the players early on I can tell he has the bug, the fantasy bug. Lucas was looking into projected pitcher schedules the same as I was. We had texted about it. I can tell Lucas is into it. He knows how to manage a team. Obviously, he outmanaged me last week, so we'll see what he does. I don't know if he leans heavily into pitching and try to combat Chris that way, or if he tries to get sneaky or instead of pitching, maybe he tries to expand a category in batting. It's just, man, it's so hard to do. I feel like if I was Lucas, I would try to start enough pitchers to get strikeouts or relief pitchers to keep that ERA WHIP saves. That's 4 categories. Stolen bases, and then home in on averages. Get a high average and then start benching people because runs, home runs, and RBI might be impossible. One player I wanted to give a shout out on Lucas's team, which I think is a good pitching team. I mean, Scherzer, Hendricks, Rodon, and Bassett, very strong pitching team. Max Scherzer makes more money than the entire Orioles lineup. So, I mean, Max Scherzer, I think, will only get better as the season's going on as long as he stays healthy. And, yeah, very, very strong team. So, I don't know. This will be a close one, 6-4. But it's just so hard for me to pick anyone to beat Chris's team right now. Our next matchup is Aaron versus Thomas. Other than my team, Aaron had the worst showing. He looked bad in batting. Didn't look great in pitching. We'll see how he adapts. I think he had a couple unlucky starts. For example, I think that Aaron's pitcher, Ranger Suarez, is a player that's going to get better as the year goes on. I think that the team loves him, and he's going to keep getting those starts, and they want to make him an ace pitcher. He's going to have a real workload. Like I said after the draft, health is my big concern with his team. Wainwright's old. Webb's already banged up. Wheeler's already banged up. Snell's not even playing. So injuries are my concern. If his team gets healthy, he's going to be fine. He picked up one of my favorite prospect players, free agent pitchers, whatever you want to call it, Gore, who had a good first start. Just seems like he's going to be a really good pitcher. So he also picked up Lux, who I really liked last week. He seems to be off to a hot start. So, maybe this team can still turn it around. How I have it going right now is Aaron actually winning 7-3. Thomas not getting that fantasy bug, kind of the opposite of Lucas so far. He had an open spot last week. I had to call him and get him to set his lineup. Like, he's just not into it yet. And I think Aaron is paying attention. He is adjusting his team. I think Aaron comes out 7-3, recovers from that bad week 1, and, moves back to the middle of the pack quickly. Next matchup, Vince versus Nick, the Great Hambinos versus Black Sox Innocent. So Nicholas only went 3-6 week 1, but he looked pretty strong in a lot of categories. This is a hard one for me to call. I think Vince just barely sneaked by Thomas, who, as we already covered, wasn't even all that active. So this is a hard matchup for me to call because I think Nicholas could walk away with some victories here and win this matchup. I'm just expecting Vince, same as last week, with his experience, with his knowledge, with his patience. I think Vince is just going to walk away with the victory here, although I think it will be close. So I'm putting this at 5-4 in Vince's favor. I think Nicholas just doesn't have an answer on saves, and he was dead last in strikeouts. So I think those are just two pitching categories that Vince is going to win. I think the win category was just too close for me to call. I'm calling it as a draw on this one, but that could go either way. And just RBI, stolen bases, and average, I just expect Vince to walk away through. I even gave runs and home runs to Nicholas. His team has a lot of power, and I think he could win those two categories. But overall, I think Vince comes away with the victory here. I will point out that Franco is actually injured for Vince right now, although he does have backups in Bobby Witt Jr., who started out the season looking really good. I actually tried to get a trade for him. And it's really a question of when does Acuna Jr. come back for Vince, who is a very, very good player. On the other side, looking at Nicholas' team, I really like McKenzie, his starting pitcher, and I love the Jesus Luzardo pickup. So, I don't know. We'll see how his pitching comes around. He still has the GOAT, DeGrom, sitting on the IL slot. How long until he comes back? When DeGrom comes back, he might be the most dominant pitching team in the league. So right now it's just a question of how many wins can Nick stack up before that time frame, and will he still be in a position to compete for a top 4 spot to get into the playoffs? Our next matchup is Art versus Scotty. So the Butthole Showers. Actually, sorry, correction. The Butthole Showers. Scotty has clarified that it is Showers. Versus Pine Riders, Art. So, Scott's team was hot last week. It is pretty impossible to not have him winning, which is crazy because, again, I think Art has the best team overall. But, he got upset by Ethan week 1, and I think he comes in week 2 and gets beat again 4-6 in a close one versus Scott. I'll even give Art home runs, RBIs, batting average, and saves. I think those are 4 categories that Art should win. I don't really see Scott beating him, even with how great Scott did last week. However, Art didn't do that great on runs for whatever reason. And Scott's team is a pitching team. So, yeah, I have Scotty just with the upset this week. I don't even know what to point to. I mean, Trout is already looking injured day to day. But, man, Pete Alonso, my boy, the Mets first baseman. He is starting off so strong. He looks so good. He has also maybe the breakout player of the season so far, Quan from Cleveland. Scotty is a Guardians fan, so I'm surprised not to see him in his lineup every single week. Yeah, and Harper on top of that. It's a very good team. Bryce Harper and Trout with Quan and Pete Alonso. I don't know. Maybe it's time to start looking at Scott as one of these really good hitting teams and pitching teams. It's just a really good overall team. I don't want to overreact because it's just 1 week, but I think Scott is a early riser as far as what I thought before week 1. His teams had the most movement up there. It's just Scott and Chris looking very good. And then, of course, the matchup everyone is excited to see this week. Myself versus Ethan. Ethan had that big upset week 1, whereas I was crushed week 1. So I am hungry to win this week. I obviously have an optimistic look about my team because it's my team. However, I am picking myself to win 5-4. I want Ethan to respect me after this week because right now I don't think he does, sitting there with only 1 category win. I think I'm actually going to recover an average, but not enough. I'm giving that to Ethan, giving RBIs to Ethan. I'm giving ERA, and I'm giving WHIP to Ethan. Outside of that, though, win, saves, strikeouts, I think are just a lock, along with stolen bases, which my team was built to dominate in stolen bases. So those are just 4 categories I think I'm going to win. I think home runs are going to be close between us, but I think overall I will win runs. So that puts me at 5-4 in a very close matchup with Ethan. I gave him the day off today because it's his birthday, but also so he had no chance to come back with any reasoning on why his team would actually be better in this matchup. I think this is the biggest game in our league's history. I mean, Ethan and I, the 2 podcasts, brilliant minds with hot takes, just going at it. So yeah, we'll be discussing the results of that matchup in a hot tub next week. And I'm excited to take a little victory lap there. Final thoughts on the week. None that I can think of. I don't know how everyone else is feeling, but I'm really into it. Loving it so far. I lost week 1, but I really think it's poor management decisions, which I love losing that way instead of just dumb luck, which that's how fantasy football comes across sometimes. I feel like this is a lot more on you when you lose and how you drafted, how you built your team. So, yeah, no, I'm really liking it so far. Excited to see where things go. Really hoping that Yelich trade, although it completely sank me week 1, hoping over the course of the year Yelich keeps going strong and becomes worth all the losses that I stacked up. He's already got me 4 losses, so I hope he makes that up over the course of the season. So, all right, that's where we'll end it today. Best of luck to everyone, and see you next week.